Aumann.
Bene, si sente? Sì, perfetto. Buonasera, benvenuti. Lasciatemi dire innanzitutto quale onore è avere qua professor Aumann e avere la possibilità di dialogare con lui in questa oretta insieme, averlo a Cagliari, poter capire e andare in profondità su quelli che sono stati i suoi contributi non solo all'economia ma alla matematica, alla scienza, al pensiero sociale, all'avanzamento della conoscenza in generale, direi. Giusto due parole, non voglio togliere troppo tempo al suo intervento, ma mi sembra doveroso introdurlo e anche inquadrare un pochino il tema della serata. Il professor Aumann è un matematico fondamentalmente che si è occupato di una branca particolare della matematica che si chiama teoria dei giochi. Ha una storia molto affascinante, lui è nato in Germania, è emigrato negli Stati Uniti, una vicenda travagliata, interessante, adesso sta in Israele all'Università ebraica di Gerusalemme. Si è laureato prima al City College di New York, dove ha appunto studiato matematica, dopodiché è stato per il suo master e poi per il PhD, il dottorato, gli studi post laurea all'MIT di Boston. Ha sempre studiato appunto matematica, poi a un certo punto si è interessato a questo aspetto, a questi strumenti del pensiero, del formalismo matematico che si chiamano appunto teoria dei giochi. Che cos'è la teoria dei giochi? Essenzialmente è un insieme di modelli, di strumenti formali che descrivono situazioni strategiche, descrivono e analizzano situazioni strategiche, cioè tutte quelle situazioni nelle quali le conseguenze delle azioni che noi compiamo, che i soggetti compiono, derivano non solo da quello che fanno i singoli, ma dall'interazione tra quello che faccio io e quello che fanno le altre persone con le quali interagiscono. Pensate al traffico: se io riesco ad arrivare sano e salvo al lavoro, questo dipende non solo dal fatto che io rispetti le norme del codice della strada, ma anche dal fatto che tutti gli altri rispettino le norme del codice della strada. Se ci pensate bene, gran parte delle situazioni sociali, economiche, politiche, delle relazioni internazionali che noi osserviamo sono giochi, in questo senso, sono situazioni strategiche. Il grande contributo della teoria dei giochi è stato quello di poter trovare soluzioni a queste situazioni. Cosa vuol dire una soluzione? Il modo razionale di risolvere questi giochi. Un'altra delle grandi figure nel panorama della teoria dei giochi è John Nash, e John Nash ha dimostrato che ognuno di questi giochi, per quanto complesso possa essere, per quanto grande il numero dei giocatori, può essere risolto. Quindi la teoria dei giochi rappresenta non solo una branca dell'economia, ma una grammatica della società, cioè un linguaggio che in qualche modo unifica le scienze che si occupano del comportamento umano. Detto questo, io chiederei subito a Robert Aumann qual è la sua visione della teoria dei giochi, perché le visioni non sono unanimi, ci sono prospettive differenti, e mi ha colpito, leggendo un'intervista che lui ha rilasciato un po' di tempo fa, mi ha colpito il fatto che lui si vantasse di essere stato attratto dalla matematica, in particolare dalla teoria dei numeri all'inizio, perché questa era semplice da formulare, aveva dei problemi semplici da formulare, molto difficili e profondi, quindi molto difficili da risolvere e profondi, e totalmente inutili, cioè senza nessun tipo di applicazioni pratiche. Allora mi interessa capire come lui vive questa polarità tra l'inutilità, tra virgolette naturalmente, della matematica e le grandi applicazioni che poi la teoria dei giochi ha nello studio della società.
Okay, that's a good question. In fact, I read a lot of number theory when I was an undergraduate at the beginning of the university, the first 4 years of the university. And then when I went on to do a doctorate, I did it in knot theory. And as you say, both those subjects are, the questions are very natural, very easy to formulate, but the solutions are very, very difficult, very, very deep. And the most important aspect is that both subjects are, or at least were, absolutely useless at the time. Now, after I finished my doctorate, I went into a different subject. I did a postdoctoral research in an operations research organization, a branch of the Princeton University Mathematics Department, which did operations research. Now, operations research is something very, very highly practical, and one of the branches of operations research is game theory. So that was something totally different from number theory. It was totally different from knot theory. It was a new departure. Now, you mentioned John Nash. I had met Nash when I was a graduate student at MIT. I met him, and we talked about game theory. And at the time, it didn't interest me very much. But when I went to work for this operations research outfit, I remembered the conversations with Nash, and I said, hey, this has to do with game theory. This particular problem that we were given has to do with game theory. So I decided to read up on game theory, to study it. And then it caught my imagination, my attention for its own sake. So I went from the very practical end of it, because these were very, very practical problems that we had to solve, to the theoretical part of game theory, and then back to the practical part. But I want to tell you a story about number theory and knot theory. Both those subjects were absolutely useless in the late 40s and mid-50s of the last century. They were considered absolutely useless, and that's what made them attractive, okay? The vogue, the fashion in mathematics at that time was to look down, with your nose down, at things that had any applications. One of the greatest mathematicians of the 20th century was Godfrey Harold Hardy, big number theorist from Cambridge. When in his older years, he said there was only one thing that he regretted in his life, and that was that he once did established some kind of formula that became fundamental in genetics. He said that's the only thing he regretted. He did one useful thing, yes. So that was the vogue, and I was a young guy, and I was caught up by this vogue and this fashion. Now the truth is that science, it doesn't matter whether it's applied or pure, because the pure is the same as the applied, and the applied is the same as the pure. The question is this interesting stuff? Does this stuff fire your imagination? And the fact is that both number theory, well, let me tell you first about number theory has become extremely useful in the last 10 or 20 years. It is the basis of cryptography, yes? And you could not run your computer without number theory. And this stuff that was considered absolutely useless in the 40s, and that's what made it attractive. now has become the basis of your computer, okay? And now I'm going to tell you a story about knot theory. Knot theory, so, I did my thesis in knot theory, and then shortly afterwards, I left it and went into game theory. I got the main result for my thesis was in October of 1954. October of 1954, I was standing in the shower and I was thinking about this very difficult problem, and suddenly the solution hit me. So that was October of 54. Now, I am sitting in my flat in October of 2004. So we're talking about exactly 50 years later, okay? And the phone in my flat rings. Yeah, I wasn't married yet to Batya over here, because Batya is my second wife. My first wife died in 1998, and then afterwards I married Batya. But at that time, in 2004, I wasn't yet married to her. I was alone in my flat. And the phone rings, and on the line is my grandson, Yaakov Rosen. And he is studying in medical school. He's in the second year of medical school. And he says, "Grandpa, can I pick your brains?" And I said, "Sure, Yaakov, what's up?" And he says, "What are linking numbers?" I said, "Yaakov, what do you mean linking numbers, like in knot theory?" He says, "Yeah, like in knot theory." And I said, "Are you studying mathematics as a minor subject?" He said, "No, we're studying this in medical school." And the lecturer talked about linking numbers, and I didn't understand what he was saying, and I don't think he understood it either. So what are linking numbers? I said, "Why are you studying knot theory in the second year of medical school?" So he said, "Because the DNA in a cell sometimes gets knotted up. Knots get formed in the DNA, and this can cause problems, and these serious problems. They can cause cancer and other problems when the DNA in a knot So we have to understand knot theory." And afterwards, I found out that this is really an important branch of genetics. Yeah, the knotting of the DNA. I was totally blown over, because this stuff that I had done exactly half a century earlier, because it is absolutely useless, now was the basis of an important branch of medicine. People's lives are saved because of that. I was totally blown over. So anyway, that's the answer to your question.
Intanto grazie. Uno degli aspetti della teoria dei giochi sul quale Aumann ha più lavorato è la cosiddetta teoria dei giochi ripetuti. Adesso non entriamo troppo nei dettagli, però a proposito di inaspettate applicazioni della teoria pura, do subito la parola a Armando Massarenti, che non è solo, diciamo, il responsabile delle pagine culturali del Sole 24 Ore, ma anche un filosofo, e qualche anno fa ha scritto un libro intitolato così: "Perché pagare le tangenti è razionale ma non vi conviene". Allora, mi sembra che farci spiegare da lui cosa c'entri la teoria dei giochi ripetuti con questo titolo, che tra l'altro è di estrema attualità, possa essere interessante.
Beh, intanto grazie. No, tra l'altro questo libro contiene anche un'intervista ad Aumann, perché effettivamente io 20 anni fa in quel libro ho riproposto questo saggio in cui cercavo di spiegare Tangentopoli attraverso la teoria dei giochi. Era un esercizio abbastanza rocambolesco, cioè spiegare quindi la corruzione, spiegare i meccanismi della corruzione. E però anche lì c'erano delle me è piaciuta moltissimo questa risposta che ci ha dato Aumann, perché tra l'altro veramente fa strame di una serie di luoghi comuni che nella cultura italiana sono difficilissimi da abbattere, no? Il fatto, anche le discipline che si intersecano tra loro, una cosa che era inutile in matematica può diventare utile in biologia, eccetera, eccetera. Qui in Italia si dice sempre che tutto deve essere applicato. No, la scienza pura è la cosa più importante di tutte e non c'è quella distinzione. Ecco, lì c'erano due cose che cercavo di spiegare. Una era, in quel ragionamento, era l'equilibrio di Nash, magari invece ce lo spiegherà lui, i giochi non cooperativi, appunto, e i giochi ripetuti. Insomma, queste sono le tre cose fondamentali che servivano per costruire un ragionamento. E poi a me ha fatto un enorme piacere trovarlo confermato nell'intervista che poi gli avevo fatto. Però, appunto, io credo che questa sera, visto che è diventato di strettissima attualità questo tema, è ritornato. Io infatti ho fatto questo libro 2 anni fa perché lo immaginavo che sarebbe tornato di grande attualità. Abbiamo degli scandali proprio sulla corruzione, forse Aumann lo sa, che riguardano il Mose di Venezia, che riguardano Expo di Milano. Ecco, la cosa interessante, secondo me, che mi piacerebbe che lui ci raccontasse adesso, che è questa branca della teoria dei giochi che ci spiega come emergono le norme, cioè l'emergenza delle norme, sia le norme positive che riguardano la cooperazione sociale, sia le norme negative che invece appunto ci immergono tutti in una situazione in cui la corruzione è molto importante. Tra l'altro in quella intervista che gli avevo fatto lui parlava di semafori, parlava di tasse, di evasione fiscale, cioè questo vale per tantissime norme. E allora chiudo soltanto con una battuta e poi gli do la parola per spiegare poi anche la cosa che tu dicevi all'inizio del seguire le norme della strada. C'è una battuta a Napoli c'è un episodio raccontato, mi ha raccontato appunto un napoletano, ma è assolutamente verosimile. A un certo punto c'era un senso unico e tutti andavano in senso contrario. Allora arriva un vigile che vede uno che invece cerca di infilarsi nella strada nel verso giusto, lo blocca e gli dice: ma cosa fa lei? Ma scusi, la prego, favorisca l'infrazione. Ecco, perché a volte appunto le norme vanno in una direzione diversa. Allora io, come prima appunto, chiederei ad Aumann se ci vuole spiegare e raccontare un pochino come funziona questo emergere delle norme. La cosa è un po' complicata, lo so, si parte anche, l'altro elemento ancora era il dilemma del prigioniero, che è una situazione in cui non ci si riesce, la cooperazione non funziona, ma se lo ripete, se viene ripetuto, invece certi meccanismi si mettono in moto ed è possibile addirittura una cooperazione spontanea e quindi l'emergere di norme che invece sono favorevoli per tutti. Grazie.
Okay, so thank you very much. I heard a number of themes here, and I'm going to try to touch on all of them. So one was corruption, and one was tax evasion, and one was cooperation, which doesn't work in a one-time context, but it does work in a repeated context. Okay, so let me try to touch on all of those. Let's start with corruption. First of all, I have to say that corruption is really something very natural, okay? So I don't know if you feel good about that or you feel bad about it, but it's something very, very natural because it's, somebody who is has some power. It could be a very low-standing bureaucrat, somebody who has to give sign some kind of paper or something like that, and then he expects that you give him 20 euros or something like that, to sign that paper. Or it could be a prime minister. Yes, I mean, we've had in Israel, a prime minister who was recently convicted of corruption. Not while he was prime minister, but still. Who makes very important decisions, yes, which help this or that individual. So, if you help some individual, then you expect a quid pro quo. It's very natural, yeah. It's game theory, yes. It's the non, but corruption is very bad. Yeah, I'm not speaking in favor of it. Don't get me wrong. Corruption is something that eats at the basics of the economy of a society, and it has been shown empirically that there's something called the NBER report. The NBER is the American organization called the National Bureau of Economic Research. And they really raised the question, hey, maybe corruption is okay. Yeah? Maybe it's all right. Maybe it helps the economy. Yes, it greases the wheels. Maybe it's okay. And they did an empirical study, and they found that no, corrupt societies do not do economically as well as non-corrupt societies. Well, less corrupt. I don't think there's any society that's non-corrupt. Yeah? But the less corrupt societies do economically better than the more corrupt societies, although it's something very natural, okay? So now, in some societies are less corrupt, and some societies are more corrupt. And how does that happen? The way it happens is that you mentioned John Nash before, right? There's something called a Nash equilibrium. What's a Nash equilibrium? This is a concept developed by John Nash in the early 50s. Now, a Nash equilibrium is a situation where you have a number of individuals involved, a number of players, and each one does the best he can given what the others do. Yeah. So in other words, the others are doing something, and each player does the best he can vis-a-vis that. All right. Now, in a corrupt society, each side expects the other side to be corrupt. So let's say you are in a society like in Russia, let's say, for example. I don't want to talk about Italy, but let's talk about Russia. Russia, not today, maybe yesterday, I don't know. But anyway, this is about 20 years ago, okay? At the beginning of in the first few years after the fall of the Soviet regime. Now, over there, they just didn't pay the policeman enough. So a policeman, if he stopped you on the street, you gave him whatever number of rubles was necessary, and he expected it, and you know that he expected it, and he knows that it's okay. This is the norm. Okay, it's a norm of society. So each side expects the other side to conform to it. The giver expects the policeman. If the giver offers the policeman a bribe, he knows that the policeman will accept it and that he won't turn him in. In the United States, there may be corrupt policemen, okay? But it's not the norm, all right? It's not the norm. In Israel, it's not the norm. I wouldn't dare offer an Israeli policeman, let's say I'm caught for speeding, I wouldn't dare offer him 20 euros because I would be afraid that he will turn me in, yes? And that's a much, much worse offense than speeding, okay? So I would be afraid that he'll turn me in. But now, why shouldn't he accept the money? Yeah, what's in it for him to have to go to court and do all this paperwork and so on? He could get 20 euros more. In Israel, that's a lot of money. It's 100 shekels. Why would he turn that down? the reason that he'll turn it down is because if he doesn't turn it down, he's afraid that I will turn him in for accepting a bribe, you see. So there's a sort of an infinite circle over there, and that circle is made up out of mutual expectations. Okay, so in a non-corrupt society, not being corrupt is a Nash equilibrium. In a corrupt society, being corrupt is a Nash equilibrium. Every side does the best he can, given what he expects from the other side. And that's something which is, I think, quite difficult to change. It's quite difficult to change. And let me give you an example. You're talking about Italy. Okay, so in Italy, I don't know if you remember that, you're young people, but like 10 or 20 years ago, there was a drive by the Italian judiciary to stamp out corruption. A lot of very highly placed officials were put in jail, okay?
1992.
All right?
1992.
You remember?
In 1992, yeah.
1992, yeah.
I'm not that young.
Okay, so there was the, and what happened? In other words, it's apparently it's deeply ingrained in society. Okay, it's you ask me what can I do about it? It's a Nash equilibrium. In Italy, it's a Nash equilibrium that you can put the officials in jail. Or you can, it doesn't help particularly because those mutual expectations are deeply ingrained in society. Now, just because I work in game theory, that doesn't mean I have a solution to all the problems. I don't know what to do about it, yes. I have to tell you, I don't know. I don't know what to do about it. Those mutual expectations stay in there. I think this drive by the Italian judiciary to stamp out corruption, and basically the fact that you come and ask me again about corruption now, more than 20 years later, shows that this failed, yeah? What more can you do? What more can you do than to put all the prime minister in jail and so on? There isn't much that you can. I can't think of anything. Okay. Now let me get to the second matter: tax evasion. Okay. Tax evasion is a function of taxes that are too high, okay? When the taxes are too high, then it's worthwhile to evade, okay? It's worth, and especially, by the way, I think tax avoidance is a bigger problem than tax evasion. What's the difference between avoidance and evasion? The difference is that avoidance is legal, okay? So you go into you take advantage of the complexities of the tax laws, and you don't pay taxes. You end up not paying taxes. Evasion is doing something illegal. That's the difference. I think avoidance is a bigger problem because in the United States, I don't know how it is in Italy. I know in Israel we have complex tax laws, but they're not nearly as complex as they are in the United States. I mean, in the United States, the tax laws are crazily complex. There's something called the basic form. There are all kinds of forms that you have to fill out when you pay your income tax. But the basic form is just 2 pages long, 2 pages long. The instructions for the basic form, it's called the 1040, are more than 120 pages long. The instructions for filling out those 2 pages are more than 120 pages long. Now, when you get to that kind of situation, then first of all, it makes a good living for your accountants and so on, but also it creates all kinds of chances for avoidance. And then people feel it's unfair. Yes, the rich people, they pay their accountants and they avoid taxes, and sometimes they pay nothing at all. And the middle class has to pay high taxes, and so they start evading. And the idea is to keep the taxes at a reasonable level. You're not to charge. I'll tell you a story about taxes. In Israel, we used to have, it was a socialist economy. It was, it's no longer. It was a socialist economy. And so in the mid-60s or 70s, they had a maximum marginal tax rate of 80%. You hear this? 80%. 80% marginal tax rate. Okay, one day I had some chest pains, and actually I've survived since then. It's more than 50 years already. But at that time I had some chest pains, and I went to my doctor and I said, could you make an electrocardiogram? He said, sure, Mr. Aumann. And he made an electrocardiogram, and he said, you're as healthy as an ox, no problem. I said, okay, what do I owe you? He said, you owe me 10 Israeli pounds. I said, okay, here's the 10 pounds. Can I have a receipt? He said, oh, you want a receipt? Then it's 70 pounds. Okay. Now, this was a person who was absolutely, he was not a criminal. He was a guy like you and me and you, okay? And everybody in the audience. It's called a normative guy, yes? I mean, he wasn't a criminal, but that was a norm. And when you get 80% tax rate, that's ridiculous, yes? I mean, you're forcing the people to evade the taxes. So you keep the taxes at a reasonable rate, and then you won't give the people incentives incentives is the name of the game in game theory. You don't give the people incentives to get into this business. It's not worth it. It's not worth it not to sleep at night. If you're paying 30% taxes, 20, 30, up maybe 35% so on the margin, then you're not going to risk. You want to sleep well at night. Yes, you don't want the tax man running after you. But if it's 80%, then that's what happens. So you have to keep the taxes at a reasonable rate in order to check the evasion. You're not going to check the avoidance that way, but all right. The last question you raised was the question of repeated games. How does that work? Okay. You asked about the prisoner's dilemma. In the prisoner's dilemma, you play it once. It's not worthwhile for you to cooperate. You play it often, it becomes worthwhile. Let me tell the audience what the prisoner's dilemma is, okay? Or do they know? Does the whole audience know what the prisoner's dilemma is? You don't think so. All right. So let me tell you what the prisoner's dilemma is. It works this way. There are two people. Let's call them Ann and Bob, A and B, okay? Ann and Bob. Now, both people are given a choice between, they tell me, let's say I'm Bob, I am Bob, but let's say I am Bob, and they tell me, look, you can either get 1,000 euros for yourself, or Anne will get 3,000 euros. And at the same time, Anne is told the symmetric thing. So she is told that you, Anne, can get 1,000 euros for yourself, or Bob will get 3,000 euros. Now, if we both say, let the other side get 3,000 euros, then both sides get 3,000 euros. All right? Which is good for both sides. But that's not going to happen. Why? Because I say to myself, look, I never heard of Anne. Yes, I don't know her. She's not even sitting here or something. Yet, just sitting in a different room. Why should I give 3,000 euros to Anne? 1,000 euros is money. It's, it's a nice sum of money, 1,000 euros. Why? Now, if I say, well, she is going to give you 3,000 euros, all the better. I get another 1,000 euros. I get 4,000. Okay, it's worthwhile for me. There's no reason why I should give 3,000 euros to Anne when it's at the expense of my getting 1,000 euros. And the same thing for her. So what's going to happen is that we both get 1,000 euros instead of both getting 3,000 euros, which we could have gotten. Now that's in a one-time game. But when the game is repeated, this fosters cooperation. How does it foster cooperation? Well, I say, look, let's start out, we give the first time, yeah? Let's say we play it once a month. The first time we say, okay, let's give 3,000 euros to the other side. And then the moment that the other side is repeated again and again, let's say indefinitely often, and then I say to Anne, look, I'm going to give you 3,000 euros today, and I expect you to give me 3,000 euros. And if you're not going to do it, then next time and forever afterwards, you're only going to get 1,000 euros. Okay? And actually, that is so repetition fosters cooperation because you have the future in mind. And actually, that is the basis for all cooperation. All cooperation is on this basis. Because I go to the grocery man on the corner, and I take a bottle of milk, okay, a carton of milk, and I pay him for it, or maybe I even say, look, give it to me on credit. Now, if I don't pay him, he's not going to give me credit in the future. Okay, that time he lost, but he's not going to give me credit again in the future. And if he gives me sour milk, then I'm not going to go back to him in the future, right? So all cooperation is, people don't think of it that way. They think of love your neighbor as yourself. But really what it's based on is that if you, on the basis of past experience, you get a positive result from the other side, then you're going to carry it on in the future. That's a Nash equilibrium in a repeated game, okay? Cooperation is a Nash equilibrium in a repeated game. I think I've touched on all the bases.
Great. Thank you.
Sì, il tema importante che emerge dalla teoria dei giochi ripetuti è proprio questo, cioè che la cooperazione nel lungo periodo può essere sostenuta anche tra soggetti che sono puramente autointeressati, non necessariamente altruisti, quindi a maggior ragione quando invece ci sono motivazioni prosociali o diciamo di natura altruistica. Io passerei a un tema più leggero, dall'evasione fiscale alla corruzione alla guerra nucleare. Perché i teorici dei giochi nel dopoguerra, diciamo nel periodo della guerra fredda, erano tutti in trincea come consulenti di una parte e dell'altra, diciamo, nelle superpotenze, per studiare quelle che erano le strategie ottimali, in qualche modo contemporaneamente per cercare di evitare il conflitto, ma anche di non esporsi troppo al rischio di un attacco. Aumann ha lavorato negli anni 60 su questo tema con altri personaggi come Arsani, come Gérard Debré e con Rainer Zelten, che hanno preso tutti il Nobel, tutti economisti hanno preso tutti il Nobel, alcuni per la teoria dei giochi, altri per altri contributi, e il padre fondatore della teoria dei giochi, John von Neumann, è stato il consigliere militare per la sicurezza militare del Presidente degli Stati Uniti. Quindi figure chiave. Nel 2005 Aumann ha condiviso il premio Nobel con Thomas Schelling. E Schelling dice in un'intervista che l'evento più importante che ha caratterizzato il XX secolo è quello che non è accaduto, cioè lo scoppio, per fortuna, della Terza Guerra Mondiale, di una guerra nucleare. C'erano posizioni molto diverse tra i teorici dei giochi. Alcuni, von Neumann per esempio, suggeriva un attacco preventivo. Per evitare di essere attaccati dovevamo attaccare. Altri, come Schelling, erano più cauti. Mi interesserebbe capire che clima si viveva in quegli anni e quali contributi ha dato la teoria dei giochi alla risoluzione del conflitto, in qualche modo, alla cooling down, al raffreddamento della guerra, della tensione.
Well, you ask what it was like during the Cold War. The Cold War was a very, very serious thing. It was very serious, and I remember very clearly the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. This was, I think, 61 or 62. I was in my early 30s, and I really thought that the world is coming to an end in 2 weeks or something like that, yeah? The world is coming to an end in 2 weeks. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a very, very scary affair. And I have to hand it to Mr. Khrushchev, yes? Khrushchev was the cool-headed guy over there. And, but the Cold War was an extremely serious thing. Now, what Schelling said in his Nobel speech in December of 2005 was exactly what you said, that the most important event of the 20th century is one that did not happen, yes. But it's not just that there was no World War III, but it was that no nuclear weapon was exploded in anger after Nagasaki. Okay? There was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was the end. For 60 years, exactly from 45 to 2005, for 60 years, no nuclear weapon was exploded in anger. That was the event that did not happen. Yeah, right. So, and I think, I really think that this is something which is not understood by the general public. There are lots of things that are not understood by the general public. I'll go into one of them afterwards. But one of the things that is not understood by the general public is that armaments are designed, the reason that we have armaments, the reason that we have weapon systems is in order not to use them, okay? We design the weapon systems in order not to use them, okay? And this is not understood by the general public. And this, I think, Tom Schelling and your humble servant do understand this truth. So the world, when I was during the whole period of the Cold War, I was in academia and I would often visit the United States, and there they had these bumper stickers. Yes, there was the movement to abolish nuclear weapons, to outlaw them, to destroy the nuclear weapons, one-sided, unilateral destruction of nuclear weapons. And I remember seeing a bumper sticker in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which said, "One nuclear explosion could ruin your whole day." Okay, so I mean, this was tongue-in-cheek. This was making a joke out of it. But there was this very strong thing, a very strong movement to disarm. And, ladies and gentlemen, disarmament would have brought about World War III. Okay? Disarmament, the reason that World War III did not happen, yes, and is that both sides had nuclear weapons. That's the reason it didn't happen. Because nuclear weapons are created not to use them. Not only nuclear weapons, any weapons, yes? You know what? Who are if you want to play good football, okay, what do you do when you want to play good football? You look at what the strategies that are used by the world champions of football. The world champions, you look at what strategies they use, and then you try to copy it. If I want peace in the world, what should I do? I should look at what the world champions of peace, what did they do? Who are the world champions of peace? Who are the world champions of peace? You tell me. Tell me. The world, in all of history, thousands of years, who are the world champions of peace? Say a name. Say a name. Switzerland. Very good. Okay. I don't know whether you take vacations in Switzerland, but I like to take summer vacations in Switzerland sometimes, or to go skiing in Switzerland. By the way, I do a lot of skiing in Italy also. And I take summer vacations now in Italy, in the Dolomites. It's beautiful. But when you go to Switzerland, what do you see there? What you see there is holes in the mountainside, yes, where they have room to put battalions of soldiers with machine guns, with, whatever you want, yeah? And you go there, you have the jet planes screaming overhead, right? Jet planes. What are the jet planes doing in Grindelwald or in St. Moritz or something like that? What are they doing over there? And why do the Swiss need jet planes? They need jet planes because they are the world champions of peace, right? That's why they need them. Now there's a bigger champion, and the bigger champion is Rome. Who has heard of the Pax Romana over here? The Pax Romana lasted for 238 years. The Roman peace lasted for 238 years. And you know why? Because the Romans had a proverb: si vis pacem para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. And you prepare for war, first of all, with jet planes and with tanks and with foot soldiers and with nuclear weapons, yes? But there's one other thing that you need to prepare for war. It has to be up here. You have to say to the other side, you know what, my friends, we want peace. But if you want to fight, let's fight, okay? And then you don't have to fight. Okay? So I think that is what prevented World War III. Because each side said to the other side, you know what, we want peace, but if you want to fight, let's fight. And that's why we didn't have it. And the bottom line is that weapon systems are created in order not to use them.
Però resta da spiegare perché all'inizio, proprio agli albori della teoria dei giochi, von Neumann, ma persino Bertrand Russell, che era un grande pacifista, aveva sostenuto la teoria dell'attacco preventivo, perché ci si trovava in una situazione, cioè quindi sì, è vero che ciò che abbiamo sentito adesso, che bisogna, che è grazie alle armi che poi si ha la pace, però si rischia grosso, insomma, no? Nel senso che alcuni pensavano che invece fosse più razionale, proprio dal punto di vista della teoria dei giochi, l'attacco preventivo, e addirittura un grande pacifista come Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell.
I know that von Neumann wanted to do a preemptive strike, but I never heard that Bertrand Russell wanted to do.
In a book about this, it was written that Bertrand Russell. No. I just want to. No, Bertrand Russell. It's I have a quotation in which it's written he was for the preventive attack. Like von Neumann, the same.
Okay. First of all, I didn't hear this about Bertrand Russell, and I cannot confirm it. Certainly, it sounds very, very interesting, and because he was a big pacifist, like Einstein also. But these people, they were very, very smart people. But you can be very smart, and you don't have to know about everything. They didn't understand about game theory. Okay. So pacifism leads to war. There's no question about it. Pacifism leads to war. Neville Chamberlain came back from Munich in March or April of 1938, and he said to the British House of Commons, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have brought with me peace in our time." Now, actually, what he brought was war. At that time, pacifism in the 30s, pacifism was the name of the game in the West. Yeah, everybody was talking pacifism in the 30s. But pacifism, what he brought with him with the Munich Agreement was not peace in our time. He brought with him World War II. And you can quote me on this. Hitler did not cause World War II. Chamberlain caused World War II. Okay? Chamberlain brought about World War II because he encouraged Hitler to invade Poland just a year and a half later. A year and a half after peace in our time, Hitler went into Poland. And you know what? Even at that time, Chamberlain did not want to respond. So the British cabinet said to him, "Mr. Chamberlain, if we don't go to war now, then you are not Prime Minister of England." Okay? So he actually brought about World War II. Hitler was furious when Hitler heard that England was going to war with him. He threw one of his famous fits of anger. He was furious. He didn't expect it. He was cheated. Chamberlain cheated him. Chamberlain cheated Hitler and brought about World War II by pacifism, by giving in, by being soft. He brought about World War II. The Romans, by si vis pacem parabellum, they had the peace. And when did it end? When they went soft. Okay, so what was your question? Oh yeah, why did von Neumann say this? Well, at the time, the balance of terror had not yet sort of gone into equilibrium. It wasn't clear how many weapons the Russians had, how many weapons the Americans had. Still, I think von Neumann was wrong, and he was too hasty, and I'm glad that wiser heads like Eisenhower prevailed over there, and that that the United States did not do that. I mean, it would have been very, very bad if that had happened. I think they might have caught the Russians before they were ready, but this is not a good solution. No way. So even smart people, very smart people, like von Neumann, one of the greatest mathematicians of the 20th century, and he was not only the inventor of mathematical game theory, together with he invented mathematical game theory, and the applications to economics were provided by Oscar Morgenstern, who was a wonderful person. I knew him personally very well. I didn't know von Neumann very well personally, but I knew Morgenstern personally very, very well. Anyway, you can create game theory, and you can be the father of the computer as we know it today. Von Neumann was the father of the electronic computer, and he was also a pure mathematician of extreme ability. But you know, sometimes these people make mistakes also, and I think wiser heads prevailed.
Lei ha fatto gli studi post-dottorato a Princeton, dove stavano e lavoravano personaggi come Einstein, come Kurt Gödel, come von Neumann e Morgenstern e altri. Mi interessa, appunto, diceva di aver conosciuto Oscar Morgenstern personalmente. È interessante perché von Neumann e Morgenstern sono i due padri fondatori della teoria dei giochi, ma secondo alcuni, proprio perché von Neumann era questo genio assoluto, secondo alcuni l'unico contributo che ha dato Morgenstern alla teoria dei giochi è stato quello di destare l'interesse di von Neumann per la materia, no? In realtà però, leggendo qualcosa di professor Aumann, lui dice Morgenstern è la madre della teoria dei giochi, no? Non il padre della teoria, la madre. Allora questo mi interessa, perché è una figura in qualche modo marginale che è sempre stata in ombra, no? nel cono d'ombra di questo genio assoluto di von Neumann, però in realtà ha contribuito a dare una svolta fondamentale per la teoria economica e non solo.
All right, let me relate to that. Calling von Morgenstern the mother of game theory and von Neumann the father of game theory, this is something that I mentioned in my after dinner speech in Stockholm, and I certainly didn't mean that to say that the mother stands in the shade of the father. No. And this wouldn't go today. Yes, this is I don't know how chauvinist or how feminist you people are here in Sardinia. But I don't think this.
No, ma era un complimento per me, no? Nel senso che era affettuoso e
I think the mother has a function and the father has a function, okay? And some people say about Morgenstern, like you said, that he worked in the shade of von Neumann. That's not true. He did not work in the shade of von Neumann. Von Neumann and Morgenstern, Morgenstern had thought a little bit about game theory in the mid-30s, but he didn't get very far with it. And von Neumann proved the minimax theorem. That's the basis of modern game theory, one could say. He proved it already in 1928. But they didn't meet, and they didn't know about each other's work until they met at a cocktail party in Princeton in 1938. And they started talking with each other, you know, like you talk with a person at a cocktail party. And they found out what they were doing, and Morgenstern realized Morgenstern realized the importance of what von Neumann had done. Yeah. Von Neumann himself didn't realize it. Okay? Von Neumann did not understand the importance of what he had done. Yes? Morgenstern discovered von Neumann, and with the work of von Neumann and Morgenstern together on their book, The Theory of Games and Economic Behavior, there's a theory of games on the one side and economic behavior on the other side, but Morgenstern provided the economic behavior, okay? So von Neumann didn't understand that, and I think understanding the importance of one's own work is at least as important as doing the work, okay? Let me give you an example. There was a gentleman called Banting who got the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1922 for his discovery of insulin, okay? And insulin, not just a discovery of insulin, but as a treatment for diabetes. Now, about a year and a half after Banting got the Nobel Prize for his discovery of insulin, somebody saw that a Romanian scientist, or physician, I think, Romanian scientist, had actually discovered insulin and published his work in a Romanian journal in the French language, okay? I love French, but, you know, it's not exactly the language of science. Not at that time and not now. In a Romanian journal in the French language a year earlier than Banting. So some people got up and they made a fuss and they said this Romanian scientist should have gotten a Nobel Prize instead of Banting. Because he did it before, right? So he should have gotten it before. Right? No, wrong. Because the Romanian scientist who published his findings in a Romanian journal in the French language, yes, he didn't cure anybody. Maybe he cured a few Romanians, yes? You know, what good does that do, yes? I mean, it does good to those Romanians, but it doesn't do good to the whole world, okay? So Banting should have gotten a prize because Banting realized the importance of his own work, and the Romanian didn't realize it. Oh, he wasn't able to sell it. I don't care, yes? Banting made insulin available to the world. And so he should have gotten a prize. Now, von Neumann, it's true he proved the Minimax theorem, okay? But he didn't realize the importance of it for economics. He didn't realize the importance of it for politics. It was Morgenstern who did that. So some people say that Morgenstern's main contribution to game theory was von Neumann. And they say that in derision. But in fact, I wish my contribution to game theory was that great. Yes, to find the guy who was able to create this theory and to realize its importance. And von Neumann, Morgenstern was great in finding people. In addition to creating the economics, he found people. He found Abraham Wald. He found von Neumann, like we said. He found Reinhard Selten. He found, what's the name of this econometrician? He got the Nobel Prize in 2003 or something. Anyway, Hassani, a lot of people, including your humble servant, okay, a lot of people went through Morgenstern's outfit, and he found them, he created them. That's why I call him the mother.
Volevo tornare indietro alla questione del della corruzione, perché come vedete Aumann ha delle convinzioni molto forti sulla questione della guerra, mi sembrano anche molto ben argomentate, però prima ha chiuso il ragionamento in una maniera non molto soddisfacente, almeno per noi italiani che spereremmo prima o poi di liberarci di questa piaga della corruzione diffusa. E lui ha detto, ma forse allora non c'è niente da fare, no? Io forse però tornerei su questo. Siamo sicuri che non c'è niente da fare? Cioè non si può pensare che la teoria dei giochi non ci dia qualche strumento proprio per cambiare gli incentivi, oppure per cambiare le condizioni di contorno delle decisioni, cambiare per esempio i modi in cui vengono assunti i funzionari pubblici, cambiare i modi in cui la durata dei loro esercizi, non so, sono piccoli esercizi che si possono fare per fare in modo che la situazione generale non degeneri o comunque non perseveri in questo tipo di... E l'altra domanda che vorrei fare è che a me sembra che ogni volta che ci si pone il problema in Italia alla fine si pensa che semplicemente inasprendo le pene si possa risolvere qualche cosa, quando invece si trascura completamente il meccanismo che abbiamo sentito questa sera, cioè di vedere come funziona l'emergere della norma perversa, no? Per cui quindi che non basta la pena, non basta andare a beccare, anche perché è diffuso e quindi è molto più difficile, come Davigo lo ha ripetuto tante volte, in casi di corruzione è difficile proprio il lavoro del magistrato di andare a prendere il singolo colpevole. E quindi volevo chiedergli questo, se secondo lui, come a me pare, inasprire le pene in situazioni di questo genere non cambia più di tanto gli incentivi, la situazione rimane quella precedente.
Sì, se posso aggiungere una postilla a questa domanda. Lei ha detto che appunto c'è un equilibrio di Nash nel quale esiste la corruzione, un altro equilibrio di Nash nel quale non c'è la corruzione, ed è difficile, estremamente complicato passare da un equilibrio all'altro. Però il professor Aumann è anche molto umile, perché ha parlato di equilibrio di Nash, ma c'è anche una versione di Aumann dell'equilibrio, che è l'equilibrio correlato. E l'equilibrio correlato è in qualche modo una generalizzazione, un raffinamento dell'equilibrio di Nash, che sfrutta diciamo un segnale pubblico, qualcosa che accade fuori dal gioco, un evento, un segnale culturale, un qualcosa che consente ai giocatori di transitare da un equilibrio magari inefficiente a un equilibrio migliore, banalmente, da un equilibrio nel quale tutti sono corrotti a un equilibrio nel quale la corruzione è meno diffusa. Allora, riprendendo la domanda di Massarenti, appunto, legandola a questa idea di equilibrio correlato, che cos'è questo segnale pubblico? Il titolo della serata di oggi è razionalità, il grande coreografo. Il grande coreografo è quello che dà questi segnali, che in qualche modo ci aiuta a coordinare le nostre azioni per rendere la vita sociale in qualche modo meno conflittuale e più armoniosa. In che modo si può agire? Cosa può essere questo segnale esterno?
The thing about the choreographer, the great choreographer. What is, let me say something about the great choreographer. I read the title of this conversation or interview in the program of the Leggendo Metropolitano, and I understood all the words there except for the word about the great choreographer. Who is the great choreographer? Yes, I mean, what does this mean? Could you repeat that?
Yeah, ci sono alcuni teorici dei giochi, Herbert Gintis per esempio, no? È uno di questi, che interpretano il suo concetto di equilibrio correlato come la capacità dei soggetti di coordinare le loro azioni, ma solo attraverso l'esistenza di segnali esterni, quindi che sono in presenza di norme sociali, in presenza del diffondersi di una cultura, il cambiamento di un certo atteggiamento pubblico. Questo consente ai soggetti, attraverso la creazione di aspettative circa il comportamento dell'altro, di passare da un equilibrio all'altro, sfruttando appunto la sua idea di equilibrio correlato. E lui chiama questa, la natura e la cultura, il grande coreografo, che consente questa armonizzazione delle scelte. Gintis non sarà contento di questo fatto che lei ignora la sua interpretazione.
Look, you mentioned correlated equilibrium, and the essence of correlated equilibrium is that you give the players different signals, okay? So you give each one partial information about something or other, and but you give the different partial information. It's a nice concept, I like it, yes, but I really don't see how it is relevant to this business of corruption. I don't see it. Maybe there's an idea over here, we can discuss it afterwards. Maybe you have some insight that I don't have, yes. You know, at dinner, I was asked, Bob, they said to me, just now, a couple of hours ago, what happens when you don't know the answer? Do you know the answer to all the questions? So I say, well, I know the answer to some, but I don't know the answer to all. And when there's a question that I don't know the answer to, I say, I don't know. Okay? You know the Talmud, this is one of the great works of it's ancient, about 2,000 years old, of Jewish, one of the great Jewish sources is the Talmud. And there they have the Talmud says there are 7 attributes of a wise man. And they list the attributes. And the last one is when he doesn't know, he says, I don't know. Okay? So that's an attribute of a wise man. And I have to tell you, I don't know. I don't know how to go from a corrupt equilibrium to a non-corrupt equilibrium. I don't know how to do it. And you suggest a correlated equilibrium, and it sounds like a nice idea, but I don't know the details. I can't see how that could be relevant, but maybe it is, you know, God bless you. It sounds like an interesting idea, let's put it that way. It sounds like an interesting idea, and we can discuss it. But at the moment, I don't know how to go from a non-corrupt equilibrium from a corrupt equilibrium, how to change that. And I see that in Italy, you people tried to change it, okay? Back in 92, you really tried to change it, but apparently it didn't go away, so I don't know how to do it. I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done. It could be done, maybe, all right? It can be done, maybe, I don't know, but I don't see how.
Dobbiamo avviarci alla conclusione. Vorrei fare un'ultima domanda, personalmente, poi magari anche Massarenti se vuole chiedere qualcosa. Ha fatto riferimento al Talmud.
I don't get the translation. What happened? Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. Ha fatto riferimento al Talmud e anche al fatto che quando non ci sono risposte bisogna dire non ci sono risposte, non so cosa fare. Questo mi sembra un atteggiamento estremamente onesto e scientifico, no? Alla base della scienza. Io non ho una risposta, la cerco, no? E fin quando non ce l'ho non la do. E dico questo perché professor Aumann è stato coinvolto a proposito di risposte che ci sono o non ci sono di Talmud in un caso molto interessante un po' di anni fa. Un gruppo di matematici e statistici dichiarò di aver trovato un codice nella Bibbia, no? Un codice nascosto nella Bibbia, utilizzando un metodo particolare legato alla distanza tra i caratteri. Quindi definendo una certa distanza si potevano collegare tutta una serie di caratteri che portavano a delle previsioni, no? Uno di questi articoli fu pubblicato in una rivista molto importante, Statistical Science, una rivista scientifica, quindi approvato dalla comunità scientifica, e un altro era in corso di pubblicazione in una rivista ancora più importante, IPNAS, diciamo, gli atti dell'Accademia Americana delle Scienze. E ci fu un grande dibattito intorno a questo tema, un po' perché il tema era prettamente religioso, un po' perché sembrava pseudoscienza, non scienza. Allora venne istituita una commissione per andare a fondo su questo esperimento, su questo metodo che era stato utilizzato, e Aumann fu chiamato a dare un parere assieme ad altri su questa presunta scoperta, e gli vorrei chiedere come andò a finire.
Well, okay, let me tell you about that. First of all, let me say that this code was really very extraordinary. It was claimed to be very extraordinary because apparently it foretold events in Genesis, which was, I think, by all accounts, was written before Christ. Yeah. You know, even if you're not religious and don't believe that it was given on Mount Sinai 1,500 years BC, still, I mean, according to all the scientific studies, Genesis was completed several hundred years before Christ. All right, so and this was purported. It was purported to be a code in Genesis which foretold events that happened less than 1,000 years ago. You know, in other words, in the Renaissance, for example. I mean, this is unbelievable. Yes, it's really odd. But I looked at this, and I didn't think offhand it was very likely. But I looked at it, and the evidence was extremely strong by all scientific criteria. The evidence for it was extremely strong. Let me just give you an example of how strong the evidence was. Usually, in order to establish a scientific fact, there's something called a significance level. Significance level was usually something is considered, if the chances are 1 in 100 that this would happen by chance, then usually it's accepted. If you want to be very strict, then you demand 1 in 1,000 that it, yes, the probability that this would happen by chance is only 1 in 1,000. That is a very strict. Now, the significance levels of these studies were 6 in a million. 6 in a million. So we're getting something which is smaller than 1 in 100,000. Okay, 100 times more significant than the best accepted in science. So I said, I said to myself, Bob, you may not believe this, or you may yes believe it, but the significance is overpowering. And I thought that for many years. Now, the people who invented this, these were Orthodox religious Jews. Religious Orthodox Jews. And there were people who rejected it, who criticized it, and they were atheists, yes, or not basically atheists, some Jewish, some not Jewish. The people who supported it did it not for scientific reasons, but for religious reasons. And the people who were opposed to it also did it not for scientific reasons, but because of their philosophy, basically because their religion was atheism, okay? This was their belief, not a scientific belief. They saw this strong scientific evidence and they rejected it. There were only two people in the world who looked at this scientifically. Only two in the world. One of them was me, and another one was a friend of mine, Professor Hillel Furstenberg from Jerusalem, okay? Those were the only two people who looked at it dispassionately. I said, I don't care whether it's religious or not religious, atheist, I want to see what is the scientific evidence. And I was pretty convinced. And then I was asked to head a commission. I was the head of the commission myself, yeah, to study this and actually to replicate it. So in science, one has to do replications, yeah. And after a lot of argument about how to replicate it, because it was difficult to replicate, how to replicate this, we reached an agreement about how to replicate this, and we replicated it, and there was no phenomenon at all. No phenomenon. The phenomenon disappeared, okay? So I said, all right, gentlemen, it disappeared. I withdraw my belief that this is real. This is not a real phenomenon. Because I look at it as a scientist and not as a religious person or an atheist or an irreligious person. So the scientific evidence seemed overwhelming at the beginning, and afterwards it disappeared, so I abandoned it. That's it.
Ammutoliti. Mi sembra dire, nel paese di Stamina e altre come dire, pseudo scoperte di questo tipo. Mi sembra una lezione estremamente interessante. Io chiuderei qua ringraziando di cuore Robert Aumann per la sua presenza qua, per aver voluto condividere con noi tappe interessanti e cruciali del suo viaggio intellettuale. Quindi lo ringrazierei con un grande applauso, e grazie anche a voi per la pazienza e la partecipazione.